video, I'll be talking about the cause of what is known as sin. I'm going to read two passages from the Bible regarding a teaching of forgiveness and acceptance of sin. And these passages stem from Mathew 14 and 15, as well as Luke 7 and 8. Now, the reason I'm reading these is not just to specifically shed light on what it means to forgive or seek forgiveness. It's more or less for those that feel that they have been given a life of sin. Why not dive into the suffering that has caused that sin, that which you feel the weight of on yourself? In the first reading, I'm going to be reading from Mathew 14:15. This reading is called A Canaanite Woman's Faith. I'm going to read these in a more understandable English, just because for some they find difficulty reading or understanding the Bible because it is written in an older English if you're of an English reading Bible. A Canaanite's faith, or a Canaanite woman's faith. Jesus went forth and departed into the coasts of Tyre and Sidon, and came forth a woman of Canaan. She came out of the same coasts and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, my Lord, Son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. Jesus did not answer her, not with a word. His disciples came and defended him and protected him, saying, Back away. But she cried more to them. When came the time, Jesus answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Meaning, if you are not of the kingdom that he come from, then she came and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. And he answered and said, It is not up to me to take the children's bread and to cast it to the dogs. To which she said, Truth, my Lord, yet the dogs eat crumbs which fall from the master's table. Jesus answered and said to her, O woman, great is your faith. Be it unto you as that you wish. And her daughter, in that moment, was made whole. What is it to be vexed with the devil? And the idea for women are often taught that expressing their sexuality or being of an adultery nature is condemnable. It makes you impure. But now let's dive into Luke 7 and 8. Jesus' feet washed with tears. One of the Pharisees desired that Jesus would eat with him. Jesus went into the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat meat. Surely a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought a box of ointment. She stood at his feet behind him, weeping, and began to wash his feet with her tears. To which she then wiped and dried his feet with the hairs of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment that she brought. Now the Pharisee, which had bidden him, spoke within himself, saying, "This man, if he were a prophet, he would have known that the manner of the woman that this is that has just touched him. She is a sinner." And Jesus answered and said to him, "Simon, I have something to say to you." And he said, "Master, tell me." Jesus proceeds to respond to Simon and says, "There was a certain creditor which had two debts. There was a certain creditor that had two debtors. He owed, two people owed him. One of them owed 500, and the other owed 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he forgave them both. So then tell me, Simon, which of the two will he love most? Simon answered and said, I suppose that he to whom he forgave most. As in, which one of the two do you forgive more for not being as returning the favor? Jesus then said, you have rightly judged. And Jesus turned to the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered into your house, and you did not give me water for my feet, but she washed my feet with her tears, and she wiped the water of her tears, that which washed my feet, with the hairs of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman, since the time I came in, has not stopped to kiss my feet. My head with oil you did not anoint. This woman has anointed my feet with ointment that which she brought. Now I say to you, her sins, which you deem as many, are forgiven. For she has loved much. To whom little is forgiven, the same that love little. And he said unto her, You are forgiven for your sins. And together they sat and ate meat. And they began to say within themselves, How can he forgive this woman for her sins? And Jesus said to the woman, It is your faith that has saved you. Go in peace. That is a heavy reading, particularly from the perspective of not just the sins for women, because women take on the sins of men. If you were to look at what causes in the first reading, what do you think caused the daughter's vexation with the devil to be a sinner? Would you not say that it was the way her mother taught to think? When Jesus said to her, You do not feed bread of the children to the dogs, she responded with, Yes, that is true, but even dogs eat the crumbs off of their master's table. To a certain degree, the mother's approach is the reason that daughter has started to behave that way. She was taught to behave that way, because that is the approach her mother had, which, if you now see the lineage, where do you think you got your values from as a person? Would you not say it was your parents? Where do you think your parents got their values from? Their own parents, your grandparents. Now, what do you think is the idea of sin? What is the ultimate sin? I would argue that taking the ultimate sin into consideration would be to take one's innocence. Once you have been taken your innocence away from you, you begin to sin in the way that it was taken from you. And the more you sin, the more empty you feel. And the more empty you feel, the more you sin. Because that taking away of your innocence, the particular way your innocence was taken from you, is the only way you now feel full. And in the story of the woman that washed the feet of Jesus with tears, What do you think is the reason that Simon sees her as a sinner? When asked the question, who would you forgive more if they owed you? Would you forgive someone that didn't pay you back 500? Or would you forgive someone that didn't pay you back 50? It is a metaphor for the number of partners, regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, but predominantly the story is meant to hit in the hearts of women. What would it take for you to be forgiven? Would it be for you as a woman to hear the words of God tell you, it is not based on your actions, but based in your trauma that led to your actions, that you need to seek your forgiveness? Because it is not up to you. It was not your fault that your innocence was taken from you. That was the fault of another, the sins of another, which you now bear that particular cross upon yourself, which weighs very heavily on your soul. And so, now that we see the sin of adultery, or the sin of woman, that which all men throughout the eras have condemned on women, in the idea of saying, I don't want a woman that has slept with an infinite amount of men. I don't want a woman that has been tainted by the sins of men. Yet what do you think has taken that woman's innocence? The sins of men, from the first scarring moment of her life. And now the woman that which you judge as a man, she bears your cross too. To the point that this woman who was a sinner, who might have slept with however many men, when she was greeted forth and respected and seen as respected, in that moment, she was of very little self-esteem. She washed the feet of Jesus with her own tears, and she dried his feet with her own hair, and she would not stop kissing his feet. And which she ointed his feet with an oil that which she brought, because she wanted to seek forgiveness. What is the message behind that particular story? It doesn't matter the amount of numbers, great or small. The point of the message is the sin of women is as a result of that which scarred and took away their innocence, to which now the women that have been scarred in that particular perversion, the only way that they feel they can be made to feel good is the way they were taught to feel good. And now we judge them as a sinner, as men, because that's what they were taught. Yet what are you taught as a man if you aren't the one also adding to this particular innocent struggle? And the idea that once you learn what it means to be a man, you realize one particular thing about women. You can always push the line forward. You can always take it further and further and further. Unless if the woman says no, obviously. Because that means she is not interested. She doesn't want you to see that aspect of herself, or she would like to remain innocent in your eyes because that's how much she loves you. She doesn't want you to know the depth of her perversion that which other men have put her through. And she wishes to remain pure in her actions of intimacy with you. Now, as a man, you might say, well, that's not fair. I have that sin that I want to fulfill. Which now I face that judgment back to you. As a man, what has caused you to be fixated on taking out your sins on a woman? That which you then judge. Do you really love that woman? Or are you simply looking to get a quick fix? Because if that's the case, I suggest you take it in your hand. It's the same feeling. If you're not going to plant a seed in the garden, then I suggest you keep it in your hand. Because women bear a tremendous price simply for the idea of pleasing you, because that is what the nurturing nature of a woman is. They want to give you happiness. They want to make you feel good and loved, to the point that now we live in a society where women are taught there are no consequences, and yet they bear that cross within themselves and they feel it. Ultimately, why do you think for Jesus to forgive that woman? Why did he forgive that woman? Because no matter how much she had sinned as a result of her innocence being taken from her, no matter how much she had sinned, she was still pure in the way she loved, to the point she would do anything to make him feel loved. And Jesus saw that as beautiful. Now, let's dive into the story of Adam and Eve for a second. And the notion that I was speaking of earlier, I was speaking about how a man can always push a line further and further. You can always pervert a woman more and more and more and more, until it becomes a pattern to which she can no longer seek or feel true pleasure unless if that pattern of perversion is pushed slightly further. It is not about the amount of men that a woman has been with. It is the amount of perversion and how far that perversion has gone. Because a woman can easily be tempted, to which she can tempt a man. But in the moment a woman accepts herself, accepts that it was not her own fault that her innocence was taken from her, but in the sin of man that scarred her innocence and took it from her, that she began down this particular pathway. And as a man, once you see the hurt that women go through, it becomes tough to treat them without respect, to treat them without love. Women bear a cross just as much as men do. Who am I to judge? It is simply the scarring that which taught you. Because let's look at the lineage of pushing the line further and further. Look at our culture. Look at the fantasies of our culture. I'm speaking to you. Look at the perversion it takes for you as a man to now come forth, if you wish to get the metaphor. And now you expect women to act that way, and women expect men to treat them that way, because that is the approach men has towards woman. Ultimately, it is not a woman that is impure. It is the perversion of the man that causes a woman to become impure, to feel as a sinner. And so, I would say this is a moment of healing for both men and women, which is you need to be able to communicate, not to others, but to yourself. Why is that trauma continuously happening? Why is it that love, the love you seek, in the aspect at which you seek it, why is it that it leaves you feeling empty? Because you haven't forgiven yourself for something that which was not your fault. And I think it's about time you did. Because the moment you can heal and forgive yourself from that, you will feel light as a feather again. How can you forgive yourself if you are always seeking acceptance from others? It is not up to others to forgive you, to accept you. They are not you. They are not your life. They are not your story. But others have affected your life and have accepted your story. They have played a part in making you become the way you are now. And so if you wish to forgive, it is not up to others to forgive you. It is up to you to forgive yourself, because it is not your fault. That is just how you were scarred. That is what creates a perversion, a vexation. And the moment a woman is tempted, she will need to feel love, respect, That is what it means to be a good man. It is not, no matter what I've done to this woman, I'm just going to lose respect for her. Because if you feel that way as a man, you feel that way about how others feel about you too. In the story of Adam and Eve came the curse of women. The curse of women essentially was once you brought temptation forth, it carried on. The curse of woman is to seek and learn how to self-control. And in order to self-control, you have to learn to forgive yourself. Because until you learn to forgive yourself, you're only going to do what makes you feel empty.